YouTube land, Dan here from GeekCast Radio, doing another comic book haul video where I go through the recent pickups that I got. And I won't do any full reviews or do any spoilers, as most of these I have not read yet. Also do know that, unfortunately, my local store had some shipping problems. So I was unable to get anything that was not on my pull list because they were still kind of putting things on the shelf. So I had to kind of go in and leave. So maybe some of those books I wanted to talk about, like The Lost City of Explorers, for example, I'll push into next week. But for now, some books that I was able to pick up, and I'll start with Marvel with Avengers number 3. I do have a review of Avengers 1 and 2 that you can check out, but I am excited to see where Aaron is going with this series. Now that Loki has been revealed of the person behind everything that's going on, makes a lot of sense, as Loki was the person that started the Avengers to begin with. Go back there. If you're doing a fresh start, go back to where it all began and do a little new spin on it. And why not have Jason Aaron do that, as obviously he has a lot of experience writing Loki, writing Thor all these years. And I hope this does dive a little bit more into Doctor Strange and Black Panther storyline, as they were not in issue 2 at all. And McGinnis does continue with this book. I know some people are not a fan of his style. Personally, I do enjoy Ed McGinnis. I like cartoony art when it fits the mold, and I didn't expect it to fit Jason Aaron's storyline, but I felt like McGinnis has been upping his game with this series for sure. And he's only on this, and then he's off for 2 issues, and I think he comes back again. I guess he's going to be off and on, but if you've been, interested in getting back into Avengers, I think it's a good title. And I think Marvel realizes that Avengers is one of those books, when it's strong, the rest of Marvel kind of is buoyed by it. It can help, really support all the other Marvel titles. It's a type of story that, if Avengers is really working, and anything connected to it tends to go along with the run as well. So, if Avengers ends up being really good, I could see, it connecting to other books and people getting more excited, putting their best writer on Avengers. To me, I'm surprised it took him this long to put Jason Aaron on Avengers. I'm glad he's finally here, and I think I kind of enjoy what he's been building for issue 1 and 2. So I hope that continues with issue 3. We're moving then to Mark Waid, who is actually ending his run on Captain America. At least, now, who knows? He tends to kind of jump into Captain America when Marvel needs him. And it makes sense because he knows his character really well, and he can tell really great Captain America stories, even without Captain America in the book. This last storyline, it's been set in the future. There's been no Steve Rogers, but Steve Rogers' descendants. And if anything, just kind of showcasing the legacy of Steve Rogers and what he means. And showing even if he's not there physically, he still has an impact in a way. And Mark Waid and Chris Samney came on to this title, in November-ish, and did exactly what they needed to do, remind the world of what it makes Captain America such a great character. Their sensibilities fit the character really well. I was concerned when Samney left that it would lose a lot, and I do wish Samney was still here, but the artists that have come on and kind of replaced him have done a solid job. Even had a style similar to his, not quite to his level, of course, but I've been enjoying where this is going. I'm excited to see where it goes next, now knowing that Ta-Nehisi Coates will be taking over it on for issue number 1 in July 4th. I know Marvel's doing a huge midnight release along with Batman: The Wedding. It's going to be July 4th is setting up to be a huge day in the world of comic books. A lot going on that day. So some midnight sales, I believe, are happening. So you might want to check your local comic book store. And it seems like most people or most companies are letting them sell everything that day, as the 4th of July is a Wednesday. So some stores may not be open. I don't know. I don't even know if my local store is. I guess I should probably check that out. We'll see. Also for Marvel, their new relaunch title, a refresh title that came out this week, was Tony Stark Iron Man number 1. Today was also the last issue of Dan Slott's run on Spider-Man. I unfortunately wasn't able to pick that up. I do want to, though, where he says goodbye to Spider-Man, but now he's saying hello to Tony Stark. And I think he could have a good sense and work well with the character of Tony Stark. We've seen him have a really solid sense of humor when he worked on She-Hulk. He knows this character really well, just based upon some of the introductions of what he will be doing with the story moving forward. So we'll see. Brian Michael Bendis' run, I was hot and cold on. I loved everything he did with Doom, especially with a lot of the issues that focused on Doom and Thing. He left a lot of questions unanswered, and I do wonder, is Dan Slott going to pick up on those? Is he going to kind of do his own thing? I do. If anything, if I could have one wish, it would go back and fix Tony Stark's parentage, making his father again. I know Bendis changed that, and I don't think that ended up really amounting to much, unfortunately. And I feel like Tony Stark is one of those characters, maybe the most character that is impacted by his parentage more than anyone outside of that of Batman. So I feel like if they could go back and make that correction, I don't know how they would do it. It's not a huge thing, but it's one of those changes that I go back and I just wonder, like, I could see maybe there was something longer term plan here, but Bendis went to DC, so it never happened. But I don't know. That's one of those things that I still don't understand. But speaking of Bendis, we have his new Man of Steel #4, and I actually have not read issue #3 yet. Issue #2 kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Starting, I do really enjoy Bendis's voice for Superman. He gets this character well. There's just some mystery that they're building that I don't know if I'm fully on board yet with, and just the execution of it, especially issue 2, I felt was incomprehensible at times. And this idea of how was Krypton destroyed? It was introduced in Action Comics 1000 that it was this new character, but now they're kind of backtracking on that, trying to build mystery of if it was or if it was the hubris of Krypton like it's always been. And I guess my concern is that we'll have something similar to that with Iron Man, where we change a character's history, but we don't change the character. So this new change happens and it doesn't really impact all that much. Who knows? And if anything, I thought about doing a review of each issue. And I started with issue 1, but now looking back on it, I'm going to wait till the entire series is done. This is issue 4. We got 2 more issues, and then look at it as a whole. And it seems to be this really a gigantic prologue into what Brian Michael Bendis will be getting into with the character of Superman moving forward. There's a lot of storylines that have been inching forward bit by bit. A lot of still left unanswered. And I don't think by the end of issue 6, a lot of those questions will be fully answered. I think there'll be things that will be the prolonging and the big pieces of what the new Action Comics and Superman will be focusing on. We'll see. There's been some introduction into some new characters that have some potential. And I am somewhat concerned that they're going to get rid of the Lois Lane marriage and possibly even Jonathan Kent, who knows, in some regard. I really hope they don't, because that family dynamic, especially the father-son dynamic for Superman and Jonathan, has been a huge part of what has made this series so good since Rebirth. So I hope Bendis at least brings that in a little bit. I was kind of interested that found it weird that his voice wasn't really strong in the first 2 issues. So we'll see if that changes moving forward. But there are pieces here that I think could work. But I think it's hard to fully grasp without seeing this entire Man of Steel really complete, because we're getting so many little chunks of different stories that it's just kind of inching along, and I'm just trying to determine like where exactly is this going. And we'll see. Also, I picked up Justice League #2, and Justice League is actually a book I didn't originally have on my pull with issue #1. After issue #1, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna go for it. I was not a huge fan of Metal. I was not a huge fan of No Justice. And reading a Scott Snyder book, there's no question in my mind that he puts a lot of care and love into his work. It's on the page for sure. But sometimes I feel like he gets like an excited puppy in a way, at least with that of Metal, where he has all these different things he wants to do and all these different ideas, and he throws them all against the wall, and he tries to do them all, and by the end a lot of things are not really to be fleshed out fully. A lot of things don't have the payoff you would hope for, and ultimately all these crazy concepts are introduced, but what's left behind is character. And I need character. I need something to latch on to feel like it's all worth it. And with Metal, I think I felt like there was a lot of craziness. There was a lot of insanity. There was a lot of big things that happened, but I was kind of left numb by it. With No Justice, it started off strong, but again, it was this huge, gigantic team with all these different moving pieces, all these different writers, and by the end of it, it just got to me a little bit over bloated, and I wasn't all that excited about it. What I loved about issue #1 of Justice League is that it got back to, it had Martian Manhunter, who's in the cover, the variant cover for issue #2. It made him the focal point. It added an emotional stakes to everything that was going on to make it more meaningful. And I'm hoping that will continue moving forward, that will have that basis. I also really liked how the rise of the Justice League was reflected in the rise of the new Lex Luthor and the Legion of Doom as well, and how those corresponded with one another. That was really well done. It's a really strong first issue, and based upon that, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. This is actually the variant cover of issue 2, and I've really been enjoying these version covers that TC's been doing, kind of putting the art in the forefront that they've been trying to really preach with their new lines and with these books. So they look fantastic. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I really enjoy Martian Manhunter as a character. I'm glad that he's again back in a major character. And similar to DC, similar to Marvel, Justice League, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And I think if Justice League is strong, it then supports, similar to the Avengers, supports all the other titles. Like Batman has been really good, Superman has been really good since Rebirth. But the one title that I think DC has been struggling to really find a footing with has been Justice League. It just hasn't been the book it should be. Now with Scott Snyder on it, with putting a major artist on it, it feels important again. And I think that's huge. And I think I'm glad DC is doing that. So, we'll see where it goes from here. I'm hoping that, that character piece is not left behind as we get more and more into the story that Snyder wants to be building. I know there are other Justice League books that are coming out, Justice League Dark and things like that. I might try those out. I'm not as excited for those as much as I was for this. Again, just hope it doesn't get too big and we get all these connecting pieces. I'm hoping these different titles kind of stay in their own little lane and, they're able to tell their story without having to have all the connectivity that tends to happen with all the different crossovers and things. We'll see. From the world of Image, we have Gideon Falls, number 4. And Gideon Falls was a series I was not collecting physically, but this past weekend, my local comic book store was having a 60% off sale of anything back issues older than 2 weeks. So I picked up a bunch, including issues 1, 2, and 3 of Gideon Falls. So I added it to my pull as well for this week. And I really enjoy this series. And what's interesting about this, I talk about needing character. And to be honest, this doesn't have a lot of what I usually look for in a book. It's been focusing on these two concurrent storylines. You have this preacher in Middle of America who has kind of come to this town. He's an outsider, and a murder happens. He's kind of been dealing with the fallout of that. You also have this other man living in an urban setting. I think it's Toronto, off the top of my head, and he seems to be possibly schizophrenic. He seems different messages in the trash, and it seems though that there is a connecting tissue, this black barn between these two. So a lot of mysterious things have been happening. There seems to be this force that has been kind of behind all this. This recurring motif of this black barn keeps appearing to different people. So not completely sure what exactly is happening. There's a lot of mystery here. There has not been a huge amount of character development, to be honest. Per character, we don't know a lot of the history. We don't know kind of really what's being established. A lot of story doesn't necessarily been happening, but it's just been hooking me. And I think why is because there's something about the partnership of Jeff Lemire and Andre Sorrentino that just works for me. And in a way, it's like opposites attract. They did not Green Lantern, but Green Arrow, and they did Old Man Logan. And I think what's interesting about the partnership is that Jeff Lemire, he's very he's like an economist with his writing and his art. He uses limited dialogue often. He when he's drawing, there's not that many lines, but he gets a lot of emotion. There's just like not a wasted word. There's not a wasted line. Everything has a purpose behind it. Andre Sorrentino, though, he puts a lot on the page. He utilizes the digital medium of art, I think, in more inventive ways than anyone. Like when I pick up a book he's doing, chances are I'm going to see something I've never seen before in a comic book. And there's not a lot of artists I can say that for. And just I think that excitement, that idea of seeing those two work together is why I've been sticking with it. It's why it's been working for me for so long. For those that need a little bit more story, I could see why this may not work issue to issue. Maybe trade would be a better choice. But the atmosphere, the mystery that's there, it's all kind of, I've been fascinated with it. So we'll see with issue 4, kind of if it does seem like the place in the story where that maybe we'll go back and kind of fill in a lot of the blanks, or at least maybe give us a little more hints into where this is all going. But I've been really enjoying Gideon Falls a great deal. Also from Jeff Lemire, but from Black Hammer from Dark Horse Comics, Black Hammer Age of Doom. And this too, I mean, Jeff Lemire right now is probably my favorite writer, as he's got a lot of great books, and this may be his best. Since Black Hammer came out, it's been one of the best books, and it's dangerous to link anything to Watchmen because it's just problematic. Things happen, but both why I bring it up, because both are deconstructions of the superhero genre. But what I find, what works for me, honestly, more than Watchmen, not that it's one's better or worse, is that these characters aren't as nihilistic as the Watchmen characters. They're damaged. They have problems. That they certainly are not the happiest people in the world at times. But ultimately, their desire to be superheroes tends to come from a positive place. There's less cynicism in a way, and it's almost that cynicism in a way is kind of the lack of cynicism is shown in the way we see kind of the regular universe. There are these different characters stuck in this kind of pocket world where they can't get out, and it's clear Jeff Lemire has a lot of love for the Jack Kirby New Age and New Gods and his Thor run. A lot of connections there. And it's just been a really interesting read where you have these characters that are aliens and robots and legitimately near gods. And much of it has just been them sitting around a table having a conversation. And we do have the daughter of Black Hammer who showed up last issue. I love the reveal of issue number 2, the end of it. And what's kind of funny is that ending had a similar ending to that of Metal. And I was far more excited to the ending of Black Hammer, even though it was a homage to the character that showed up in Metal. And you would think the real thing would get you more excited, but I guess I feel like it fits much more into the tone of this book and where it may go. So some have asked, like, can you pick up Black Hammer Age of Doom #1 and go from there? And the answer is not really. Even though this is issue number 3, it could easily just be issue number 19 or 20. It's just what Dark Horse tends to do is every time a new story arc starts, they start a new, instead of continuing the numbering, they go to issue number 1 and they make miniseries out of it, which I get, because some people may be more willing to pick up an issue 3 than an issue 19. But do know that if you go into issue number 1, it starts off right where the last volume 2 ended, so you may be a little bit confused. I would say pick up volume 1 and volume 2 because they're fantastic books. But if you're, wanted to dabble and pick this up, don't be surprised if you're completely lost, because it is a continuation. It literally picks up in the very next moment. So they do that not just with Black Hammer, but with Ether number 2 that came out this week, and it seems to be the thing that they do. Valiant does that too at times. But the last 2 books are actually books that have been out for some time, and it's Isil number 1 and 2. And I picked up issue 3, but I didn't have issue 1 and 2. So my local comic book store ordered them for me. These are actually reprints. This is the reprint of issue number 2, and this is the 3rd reprinting of issue number 1. And I've been really loving this series. I talked about it with my last haul, with issue 3 being released. But if you're a fan of Miyazaki, that type of fantasy world, I could definitely see that working for you. Last but not least, I talked about going to the store on Father's Day, and they also gave this as a gift to any father that showed up. It's the Secret Wars coloring book. And when I first picked it up, I'm like, oh, you know what? I can give this to my son. He likes coloring. He'll have a lot of fun with it. But it's very cool. It's mazes, very retro. It feels like it had something similar to this, like in the 80s. And then I also looked at the price. I'm like, this would be $25. Who buys a comic book, coloring book for $25? Maybe some people, but it's actually really cool. And it's got. I feel really juvenile saying that, but hey, it's got cool stickers, and that you can that they've places in the book for you to put them on. And there's some more here. It's just really interesting. They're you can, instead of just coloring, they make it interactive. It's crazy. So it's just really interesting. A lot of care was put into this. I was actually this is a decently put together package. It came out, I think this actually originally came out back when the new Secret Wars, this came out in 2015 when the new Secret Wars was establishing. And it's really just taking a lot of the original Secret Wars from the 80s and just making it black and white and giving me the chance to color it, which is kind of cool. So it also has this really cool poster at the end of it. So I don't know if you can get this anymore, but if you want to, there is that poster, Secret Wars, and kind of like one of the first, I think, major events that ever really happened. The first huge crossover. I remember reading it as a kid and thinking it was really cool because you're seeing all these different characters in this world. But I remember reading it recently, thinking this is not all that great from what I remembered. So if you're curious to check it out, maybe if I read it for a 3rd time, I'll go back and liking again. I'm not sure, but it's a really cool a really cool coloring book. Again, I don't know if I'll let my son coloring it. Maybe. Why not? He can probably color better than I can. I know I can't say into the lines. So, but that's it for me for this week. If you want to listen to more of my thoughts and opinions on some of these books that I'll talk about in more detail, especially the books I read digitally, you can check out my comic book podcast. It drops every Monday. My weekly recommends podcast on Thursdays. I deep dive into a graphic novel or original graphic novel with a special guest that I recommend them a book based upon their interest in other mediums. Recently spoke with Jay Soderbergh of the NFFU podcast, a Next Fan Up podcast, about the Kyle Stark's comedy series Kill Them All. That was a fun discussion. You can check that out at GeekCast Radio as well. And other series that are going on, my must-read video series, my Trips to the Long Box series. I'm trying to put as much more content out on this channel as we can. If you want more from GeekCast Radio, from our other podcasts, Altered Geek, Cinema Geeks, The Pull Bag, you can check that out at GeekCast Radio as well. But that's it for me. Remember that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for watching.